Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me today on today's webinar where we're going to be talking about containers. Hope everyone's having a great day today. Dave, Dennis, Dustin, Sue, Pat, Peggy, Kevin, just to name a few. Hope you're all having a wonderful week so far, and we are going to get started discussing anything and everything related to containers within SAFe. So let's take a look. And I'm just going to get into one of my sites. But before we even actually do that, if you'd like information regarding containers at any point in time, you can always go into help, go to the wiki support guide. And once you click on that link, that's going to take you to our SAFe documentation wiki guide, where you can scroll down, and up here there is some information regarding containers if you want to look that up, as well as training webinars. So the last one we did on this was in 2019, so it's been a few years. A little bit has changed, so we figured we should probably redo that, and that's what we're going to do today. So after today's webinar, we are going to record that, and I will put that updated webinar here in the training webinars, which you can watch as time permits whenever you feel like it. All of that being said, let's get into it. So containers, what are they? Well, why should you use them? And how can you set things up to use them within SAFe? Well, containers are essentially just that. They are containers, things you can put something into within SAFe, within the software. And so you may want to consider using them to group items together for long-term storage, for example. Maybe you have a number of items from a cold case where you'd like to physically take all those items, maybe put them in a box, put that box on a shelf somewhere for your long-term storage. And we've seen that done a number of ways. And let me pull up a case and we'll take a look. So there are a number of different things, different ways you can label things in SAFe. And one of those ways is by pulling up item labels. So you can select whatever items you want, go to reports, and you can pull up an item label, which is going to look like this. And we'll give it a second to render. And here we go. So I just selected a couple of items, and this is what we get. This is just a regular kind of generic item label. And now with those, you can definitely do that if you want to. Just print off a bunch of item labels and stick them on the outside of the box that you put all these things into to let everyone know what's in the box. But if you do that, we've seen things go sideways, right? And you end up with a box that looks like this. That's, I don't know, can you do it? Yeah, I mean, look right there, somebody's already done it. Should you do it? Nah, I don't know. I mean, that's giving you the highest level of detail for things that are inside that box. But I don't know that you want to print this many labels out and stick them all over your box. I don't know if that's such a great idea. So we're gonna shy away from that one. So that's one thing that you could do. Another thing that you could do is you could select your items and you could print off a container label. And let's take a look at that. And this is another type of label where you could print these off, put them on the outside of the box, just to kind of detail what's inside the box. And this type of container label is going to give you the case number, the barcode, item number, and description, and that's it. And unlike the picture that we last saw, you're not going to have to print off nearly as many of these labels to stick on the outside of the box to let everyone know what's inside the box. So that's another option for you. And then the final option is going to be printing a quote unquote another type of container label within Safe. And that is the label we're going to be looking at here very shortly. And that label is going to give you one barcode for all of these items, however many items you might have. And you can put that one label on the outside of your box. And then if you scan that one label in the scan area of Safe, you can then view all the items that were contained within that box or whatever container you might have. So how do we get these containers, which are essentially storage locations? How do we get those started? Well, you're administrators, so you are going to be able to go into settings and organization. And under the general tab, the org settings sub-tab, you can scroll down until you get to use containers. And you're just going to flip that slider from off to on and save those changes. And then containers, adding items to containers will now be available as an option for you to use. All right. So now that we have turned containers on in the system, just to let you know, containers can be created on the fly from within your case after you've entered items. And they can be created by anyone with appropriate permissions. Now, I will say that mostly we see org admins doing this, as they are generally the ones in charge of property and evidence. Although that's not to say other groups cannot do that as well. So if you want, let's go into settings and permission groups next. And let's take a look at your basic users. Permissions, we're going to click the permissions box and we'll see what a basic user can do. And typically they can view cases, items, media, thumbnails, notes, people. They can create cases, items, media, notes, people, etc. They can check things in, such as into a temporary storage location before you move those items to more permanent areas within your evidence room that they will no longer have access to. Now, if you would like your basic users or any other user group, maybe you want to let power users who are typically supervisors, you want to let them or whomever have access to add items to containers, they are going to be able to need to move those things, those items around. So underneath the create column, they will need move access, move permissions. And this asterisk here is just stating that they are allowed to move those items as long as they have access to those items' storage locations. And the way you give them access to an item storage location is in tools and storage locations. And here, for example, we can take a look at our temp blockers. And we have given power users and basic users access to that storage location, that top level. Now, if we click the blue plus, we're going to open up our temp blockers and we'll see we have sublocations underneath temp blockers. Those permissions at the top level will filter down to all of the other subcategories, sub storage locations. So you won't have to keep re-adding those over and over and over again. If you want to, for example, let's say we want to give access to the basic user and power user groups to this building B, we can select it we can edit that storage location, and in the groups field, we can click in there and add those groups in and save it. And then those groups will now have access to that storage location and everything underneath it there. And we can also see, since I've opened up this tree here, underneath building A, we have like the impound lot A, we have a shelving unit, there's another shelving unit. I have a shelf on that shelving unit. I actually have a container on the shelf in that shelving unit. And when containers are created, they are going to be placed in the initially placed within the containers folder. And if I open that up, I can see that I actually have one container in there with 3 items at the moment. All right, so let's take a look and see how we can create containers within SAFE. So I'm just going to go to one of my recent cases, which I can do by heading over to my nav menu, click on recent cases, click a case. Here it is. And we'll click on our items tab. And I have some items within this case. And it looks like, as a matter of fact, I have 7 items currently in the case. So let's say I would like to take all of these items and put them into a container. Well, let's do that. So I'm going to select all my items. I'm going to go to Actions, and we now have the Add to Container field. However, it's grayed out, and it's not letting me do that. Well, that is because one item is currently checked out. So any items that you put in a container must be checked in. So I can select the other items that are currently checked in. And what I can do is I'm going to now go to Actions. And now it's no longer grayed out. And I am able to add these items to a container. Now, the first thing after you do that, we're going to see a pop-up here in a minute, the Add Items to Container. The first thing you're going to be asked for is a container name. Now, to avoid any confusion, you are always, most likely, you are always going to give whatever case number this is, or matter number, or incident number, whatever that is, that's exactly what you're going to call your container. That way, that avoids any confusion as to what exactly this is and where those items are. Now, at this point, you can add notes, you can capture a signature, etc. You can upload files into this. We're not going to do any of that. We're just going to click OK. And then once we do that, those items that are currently in the temp locker, for example, are going to be moved into the containers folder underneath that container name. And there it is. So if we go into tools and storage locations, we're going to see that structure now. So if we open up containers, there is the container that we just created with the 6 items that we just added. We couldn't add 1 item because it was checked out, but there's that. So let me go back into my case. And let's look at the items that just got added into the container. And there they are. They're all highlighted in blue since I've selected all of them. And we're showing that they are in the containers folder underneath the container name. And they now have a printer icon next to all of them. And there's a couple of things going on here. So containers are essentially storage locations. And if you click on the printer icon for any of these items, you are going to be presented with a single container or storage location barcode. And there it is. Now at this point, you can print that out and put that one label on the outside of your box. to let everybody know what's inside the box. And if we now go into the scan area of Safe, we can scan that barcode for that container. And once we do that, on the Containers tab, we should see a 1 because we're scanning one container barcode. And there it is. So now if we click the Container tab, there's our container with our 6 items. There's whatever we've called it. And now from here, you can click View Items. And you are going to get the item list for whatever container, for whatever items you added to that container. And there they are. Now, the other part about this is, if you're okay with having your container, whatever you called it, residing within the containers folder, well, then that's awesome. You don't have anything else to do. However, let's say you don't want to put your container, you don't want to leave it in the containers folder, and instead you actually want to move it onto a shelf or something like that. What you can do is you can, once again, scan that barcode for the container, go to the Containers tab. There's your container, and at this point you can select it. You can go to Actions, and you can move the container to a different storage location. So let's do that. I'm going to keep it in the same office here. In my destination location, I'll click this dark circle with the down arrow, and let's figure out where we want to move it. Maybe we'll move it into Building B. Well, we can't store anything there. Well, that's good. We don't want people storing things there. So at this point, we can either put in a / or click this dark circle with the down arrow again. And now we can put that in one of these sub-locations. So let's put it in, I don't know, shelving unit A. Can't store anything there. All right, great. Let's click the dark circle with the down arrow again. And let's put this on shelf A. And let's save that. And now the path is going to have changed. So now if we go back into our case, go to our items, we'll see that path has indeed changed from the containers folder. Thank you all for joining me today. To the new location. Looks like we got finished a little bit earlier than I expected. It was a fairly short webinar today. So once again, I thank you all for joining. You're going to be shown you all have a pop-up wonderful Thanksgiving coming up. Container/storage location label. Eat lots of turkey and pass out on the couch somewhere. Telling you exactly where. Thanks again, everyone, for joining the webinar, and hopefully you'll be with us again next time. Bye-bye. And so you may want to consider moving your container, getting the correct path, printing that label off, and then labeling your box. So the other part about containers is this. Let's actually, let me do this. Let's go into Tools and Discrepancy Reports or Inventory Reports. Let's say we need to do an audit. And so we're going to click New Report. And let's call it something. Test report. And I, at this point, am going to scan a container's barcode. And I'll click Start. And I'm going to get a message that says the scanned barcode is a container and audits cannot be performed on containers. So that is kind of an issue. All right, so instead of doing that, we're going to do something a little bit different. And that is because discrepancy reports within SAFE are based on storage locations. And they're actually based on items within storage locations. But what the container is something a little bit different. So if we go and scan like the top level of that tree, which is building B, we get all these sublocations. And within that, if you were to go in now and scan that same barcode for the container, the one container, that would show up here. And it's treating that container almost as like one item. And then you would need to scan items in from that container. So you would need to actually open up that box, scan those items barcodes, and you can go from there. And it's showing that here. We didn't scan anything, so we're getting some discrepancies there. The other thing that you could do, you could perform a random audit by going into Tools, Random Audits, and you can call it something. And then you can either, we're not going to pick an item category at this point. We're going to select items from all item categories, and we're going to use that same containers barcode right here. And since we've just specified this one container, it's automatically including items within that container. Status is going to be checked in, so I'm going to uncheck checked out and disposed items because I'm not auditing for those. And let's just go with a number of items. Let's just go with 5 items, and we'll click OK. And from there, SAFE is telling you exactly where to go and audit those items from. And you can open up the box and scan those items barcodes. And then when you're done, you can run your report. Now I'm gonna click Run Report. And since we didn't scan anything, SAFE, of course, found 5 discrepancies, which you can then, if you want, you could add notes to these by clicking the piece of paper and pencil. You can add notes to these as you go down, click in the fixed column in the checkbox as you go down your list to fix all the discrepancies that were found. You can then save that as a PDF and have a supervisor sign off, date it, put that in a logbook for future reference or possibly accreditation. And if you ever need to go back and refer back to those, whether they be discrepancy reports or random audits, those will be saved in the system. And once they're there, you can hide them by clicking the little eyeball with a line through it to hide those things. But if you click on the hidden radial button, you are going to see all of your previous reports. And if you want to reactivate that, you can just click that eyeball again, activate the report, go back into active, and there's your report. And I think that is just about it for containers. Does anyone have any questions? If so, please type them out in the, I think there might be a question window or a chat window. But it doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment, so very good. And that pretty much concludes today's session on containers. If anyone has any questions regarding containers, feel free to please give me a call, send me an email. My name is Rob DaCosta, and I will be more than happy to help you with whatever you need help with. You can always also call our support line. If you're an administrator, please do that at 855-517-6381. And any of us here will be happy to help you with whatever you need help with. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. If any additional questions come in, I will be more than happy to answer those, and I'll probably send you an email. But other than that, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time around. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar.